I am Kyle Willis, and this podcast is part of my National Resource Management Senior Capstone project, which is dedicated to recycling. At WB Saul High School of Agricultural Sciences, Natural Resource Management students taking Ms. Simmons' class are responsible for collecting recycled items from all classrooms and around campus.
My students go from classroom to classroom to collect items that need to be recycled, and then they sort them and put them in the receptacles for the city of Philadelphia to pick up.
When I was in her class, my classmates and I often noticed that there would be stuff placed in bins that should have been placed in the trash cans because these items are not recyclable.
I teach my students about what items can be recycled and which cannot be recycled. Anything that the city of Philadelphia will collect, we can recycle. Feel good when you recycle because you are doing a good thing for the earth, for animals, for habitats, for the whole planet. So it's very, very important to recycle.
I teach my students a lot about waste management, more specifically about recycling. I tell them that the majority of things can be recycled. The key is knowing what you can get recycled curbside versus things that you may need to take somewhere to have recycled. For instance, things like pizza boxes that have oils on them, used tissues can't be recycled because they're contaminated. However, things like batteries, which you cannot dispose curbside, can be recycled if you take them to the appropriate location, and they actually should be. Other things that could be recycled are things like electronics.
This topic is important to me because my family and I recycle regularly at home, and I always make an effort to do the same at school. Project, I would like to know, do Philadelphians know how to recycle properly? For this project, I began by researching what can and cannot be curbside recycled in Philadelphia. According to the Philadelphia Street Department, the following items qualify for recycling: aluminum products like cans, glass products like bottles and jars, paper products which includes cardboards, newsprint, and cartons, plastic products like empty and clean containers or water soda bottles. With a clear understanding of what can be recycled, a Google form was created and distributed to SAR students and adults who are members of Horace on Henry CSA. During advisory, the survey was given to students in ninth through 12th grade. In total, 338 students provided responses. The survey was next given to Horace on Henry farmers to email to CSA members. 106 adults' responses was collected from my project. The results from this section of the survey were compiled, organized, and graphed. Items on the list that can be recycled were cartons, aluminum cans, plastic bottles, food boxes, and glass, where the majority of the students knew plastic bottles, aluminum cans, and food boxes can be recycled curbside. The graph showed that more students assumed that juice, soup, and egg cartons, as well as more than half of students surveyed, believed jars and bottles should not be recycled curbside. Similarly, Similarly, the majority of CSA members also agreed that plastic bottles and aluminum cans can be recycled, while assuming that juice, soup, and egg cartons cannot. There is a split with CSA member with slightly more than half assuming glass jars and bottles cannot be recycled. The recycling of food and cereal boxes is where there is most contrast between the students and the CSA members. I find it very interesting that the majority of adults thought food package boxes shouldn't be recycled. This was, in fact, a surprise to me. Let's evaluate the items that cannot be recycled in Philadelphia. The available responses were styrofoam, medical plastics like tubing and strings, plastic bags, food soil paper, light bulbs, and PVC piping. Every student surveyed every student surveyed understood that food soil papers like napkins, burger wrappers, french fry holders, and pizza boxes cannot be recycled. With regards to the rest of the non-recyclable items, there is a split. The consistency allows me to believe that more education is required to assure that my peers have a better understanding how to dispose of these non-recyclable items. Unlike the students, the majority of CSA members thought food, soil, paper products can be recycled. In contrast, the majority understood that medical plastic and plastic bags should not be recycled. I believe this group was more aware of medical plastic items not being curbside recycled because they have more experience disposing these items in comparison to students under the age of 18. Regarding the remaining items, light bulbs, styrofoam, and PVC pipes, like the student group, the CSA members require additional education and support. According to Chris Woodford, who wrote this article about recycling, during your lifetime, you'll produce over 600 times your own weight in trash, enough to fill a good few trucks. That staggering statistic might not be such a problem if we didn't have to live on a relatively small, overcrowded planet. Pretty much all the resources we have on Earth, all the raw materials, and an awful lot of energy are limited. Once we use them up, we won't get any more. So it makes sense to use things as wisely as we can. One way we can accomplish this is by recycling. While doing this project, I learned a lot about recycling by knowing what should and should not be recycled curbside in bins in Philadelphia. I personally have learned a lot that caused me to change my bad habits. For example, I used to throw bottles into the trash if recycling wasn't available. However, after doing all this research, I will always hold on to my bottles until I can recycle. In conclusion, according to Chris Woodford, who wrote this article about recycling, the best way to use Earth's resources more sensible is to reduce the amount of things that we can use to throw out. Reduce the resources and reuse things instead of throwing them away. Recycling provides raw materials to manufacturers and help create green jobs, preserve natural resources, reduce energy consumption, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The only way to collect resources is to recycle all day long, whenever you, anywhere you go to.